Part 2. Chapter 6, Gleaves, a modern-day Fagin. Imagine the dark days of old London town. Children picking pockets, stealing to survive. All the time someone is manipulating them, ensuring they do his bidding, making him rich and building his empire. This was Fagin's role in Oliver Twist. A weasel of a man who used and abused children by offering them a roof over their head. But that was Dickensian London. The law was lax, murder was rife on the streets and child abuse was commonplace. It couldn't happen now with laws in place to protect children, could it? Surely the likes of Fagin would never be allowed to exist again, would he? Forward to 20th century England and Roger Gleaves, pedophile, conman, clergyman and self-styled bishop. Meet the modern-day Fagin. Roger Charles Augustine Gleaves was born in 1933 in Leeds. He first came to the attention of the police whilst still in the army. He was arrested on his wedding day for buggery of a young lad. He was responsible for training and developing to become a soldier, but instead committed sexual acts on this child. This saw him at Winchester Assizes on a charge of buggering the young cadet who was a child of 14 years of age and his first conviction for sexual offences against children and young people. He was sentenced to 3 years in Maidstone prison, considerably less than the life sentence the poor boy was to be condemned to. Gleaves had a fetish for uniforms and was regularly seen in his bishop's attire or Salvation Army uniforms. He used these to gain the trust of the young men he regularly picked up at Victoria Coach Station as well as Euston Train Station. Gleaves well and truly took local councils to the cleaners with an estimated 20 hostels housing upwards of 60 homeless or runaways and being paid the equivalent of housing benefit for them, a very tidy income back in the 70s, I'm sure. It didn't end there, as he had numerous companies like Mephistopheles Debt Collection Agency and GB Security Services who employed these unfortunates on slave wages, if at all. Mephistopheles was jointly run with James Shackleton, a very colourful character from Shepherd's Bush who was also an undertaker and went by the title the Earl of Kensington. Whether legitimate or not I can't say. Shackleton has been arrested on 4 occasions for separate murders. The most notable being the murder of Jill Dando, who was executed on her doorstep in Fulham. He was identified as a sweating man stood at a bus stop. The problem with his alibi is first that he says he was out looking for scrap wood to make coffins, and second, why was he waiting at a bus stop when he was out in his own vehicle on the day? Jill was about to whistle-blow about what was going on within the BBC, including the Jimmy Savile abuse scandal as well as other less prominent abuses. Jill Dando isn't the first person to die after making it known about what she knew either. Bullock Forsyth, a senior housing officer, had his head bashed in and his home burned to the ground after letting it be known he was aware of abuse and corruption within the Lambeth Council. Others who have died suspiciously include Paula Yates, Michael Hutchins, Paula's daughter Peaches Geldof, as well as Mark Spratt and Rick Mayall, all of whom were aware of what was going on inside Broadcasting House. Getting back to Roger Gleaves, it's so easy to go off on a tangent when talking about him because of his links to other people and places. He set up a sect called the Old Catholic Church in the early 60s. He used this as a front to earn respectability and give credence to the numerous charities he set up in local communities in London, which did appear to be his stamping ground. Several local councils in London were duped into giving the bishop, his given title in the Old Catholic Church, large houses in run-down areas where he could house runaways and homeless men. Local councils, the probation service and even social services sent young men to Gleaves, seemingly unaware that they were going to be used, abused, or both. The very fact that no checks were done on him is in itself remarkable, considering many of his charges were vulnerable and the responsibility of social services to take care of. Instead, authorities sent most of them to be sexually abused and put to work as so-called rent boys, again making Roger Gleaves a vast amount of money. As to whether making money or abusing boys was his main goal is difficult to ascertain, as he had many business ventures with people such as Shackleton and a conman in the property field called Terence Ewing. Ewing at one point was a Mackenzie friend helping people in court who couldn't afford to go down the usual solicitor route. Of course, his business association with convicted pedophile Gleaves and pedophile care home boss Keith Hamerton must have been of the utmost embarrassment to his bosses at Mackenzie Friends, for whom the majority of work undertaken is custody work, and children being the commodity they deal with most. Children and young people have always been exploited for whatever reason, yet the modern-day world has seen children become sexualized much younger than ever before. There are people ready to exploit them, from individuals to gangs. Pedophiles have a strange knack of finding each other and indulging in their vile activities. Groups have sprouted up trying to change legislation to lower the age of consent to 3 years of age. One of the most sinister groups in living memory were a group known as the Pedophile Information Exchange, or PI. Grown adults with a sick and twisted attraction to children. They were even supported by the National Council for Civil Liberties, NCCL, Run by Henry Hodge, husband of Children's Secretary and disgraced former leader of Islington Council Margaret Hodge. Fellow NCCL members of the time included Harriet Harman MP and husband Jack Dromey, another MP, along with Patricia Hewitt MP. All were leading lights within the Labour Party. Sir Henry Hodge was a High Court judge who you'd have thought would have put a stop to this nonsense, but by their very acceptance of these vile animals, were they not in fact facilitating the grooming and abuse of our most vulnerable? At what level of society did it go to? Because reading the list of members belonging to this heinous group are lords, MPs and one of the country's foremost experts on children's welfare, the head of the security services. A name that does pop up at number 39 on the pie list is none other than Roger Charles Augustine Gleaves, which shouldn't be a surprise as he has links to almost every single pedophile ring in London and beyond. From social workers to teachers, scout leaders to doctors, legal professionals and ice cream sellers, the pederast is everywhere. They hunt down and find a victim, then they befriend them or their family and make them feel special. They take an interest in the lives of the family and everyday activities. Whether there is a cure is anyone's guess, but for most sex offenders it seems to be the power they yield over their chosen victim is the main objective, the sexual act a mere dessert in their beastly meal.